All right, so we'll try to get to the bottom of the disparity between Sixers home shooting and road shooting. Their percentages are very different. And if you look at the numbers, by the way, the Rockets lead the league, guys, in attempts. They average 44 a night. Dallas is next with 40. Minnesota 39, which, interestingly enough, Minnesota shoots 39. They're one of the worst shooting teams in the league from three. They're 32%. The Bucks shoot 39 a night. They make 35%. The Sixers, on the other hand, they hit 35%, which is 17th right now. To put it in perspective, Miami's number 2 in the league. They shoot 37%. So it's not a big difference between 17 and 2 percentage-wise. But why is it so different at home and the road? Keith Pompey watches them at home. He watches them on the road. And he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as to try to make some sense of it. Is there even a good explanation, Keith? Like, have you been around a lot of teams, road, home? These splits are so dramatic. Do you have any reason why that they are such an odd split home-road shooting?
I guess that's the million-dollar question. You keep, you even ask people, like, why are they so bad on the road? And, I don't know. It's just tough. Like, I don't know if they're not used to the rim, if they're, like, pressing a little bit, you know what I mean? Because on the road, a lot of times, it's a different type environment. Maybe they feel the pressure, like they want to play so much better now that they're struggling. So when they get out there, they're pressing. But it's just crazy. And I do know that they do have a different routine. And Brett Brown tried to switch it up a little bit, like as far as a game day routine. Like they don't have shoot-arounds typically when they're at home. They'll have a walkthrough from 4 to 5. They don't do that on the road. On the road, they typically have a shoot-around at 10, 11 o'clock, and they don't have a walkthrough like an hour before the game or a couple hours before the game. So, maybe it's a routine, but it's crazy, man. It's really mind-boggling, the difference in, the home and away shooting the ball.
Yeah, and okay, so as you chronicled in your piece today for the Inquirer, Keith Pompey is with us. Now, this is a 6-game number against a 3-game number, but on the road, 25%. At home, 46%. But the attempts are about the same. They shoot, 32 at home and 30 on the road. So some people said they shoot too many threes, and Brett wants them to shoot more threes. Is it the amount of threes is that a problem?
I don't think so. Initially I did. And actually that's why I wanted to look it up, because initially I did. And when you look at it, it's one of those things, like you said, at home, the numbers are kind of close as far as the attempts. I just think that they're just not making them. Now, I also think, here's something else that we have to factor in. Typically, they say reserves and role players typically play better at home because more so than the superstars, they get really amped up by the crowd. You know what I mean? Familiar situation, a familiar gym. And so, you think that the reserves are going to play better at home and struggle a little bit on the road due to the environment. So maybe that's factoring into it, when you look at the Sixers rotation. Because, it's true. There are some games where, on the road where Mike Scott struggles. There's games where Furkan Korkmaz struggles. And then when they come at home, it's like Furkan is scorching up the net. Mike Scott is getting a lift from the crowd. So, I think things like that, also factor in, with that. But, initially I did think they were shooting too many threes. But when you look at it, their numbers are low compared to most teams in the league. And secondly, it's just a matter of just missing them, because they're making those same shots at home.
There's probably no better evidence of that, Keith, than Matisse Thybulle, who I know he's missed some time, but you look at his splits and he shoots 58.5% from three-pointer at home and 22.9% on the road. And he's not a bench player, but a role player, and especially a rookie. Yeah. You kind of have such an interesting mix. And I wonder if it's it's still a team that's not comfortable with each other. So naturally, when you go on the road and everything is meant to be uncomfortable for you because you're in enemy territory, that's where it really shines through.
That's true, and also you got 20,000 people telling you miss it, miss it, miss it.
Right.
But yeah, I think that has a lot, and especially early on. But you would think that part, that at this particular time, 41 games in, they played 21 games on the road. You would think that they're starting to get used to it. But early on, I thought that was a major problem because you think about it, when you're at home and stuff isn't going well, the crowd is cheering for you. So you guys can really, the crowd knows when to cheer and when not to cheer, so to speak. So you can communicate with your teammates. But when you really have the ball on the road, it's kind of like you have to be, you have to know what the person is thinking at all times because you're not going to be able to communicate with them. Not a verbal communication. You can do a head nod, you can do something else. Or it's just one of those things where you've been together for so long to whereas what that person is going to think in this scenario. And I think at least early on that was the case with the Sixers, especially in some of these losses. Another thing is, and this factors in, you get certain guys, they're concentrating on shooting so much to whereas they take a lot of bad shots. Some of them, they're just, just because you're open doesn't mean that that's always a great shot for you. Sometimes you got to get like a guy like a Tobias Harris. He likes to be in rhythm when he makes his shot. He doesn't like just getting it and jacking it. He likes to be in rhythm. And I think that, some of these shots that we see, we'll say to ourselves like, wow, I can't believe they shot that ball so fast. You know what I mean? So I think that playing on the road, that can factor in.
Keith, I was saying the same thing earlier, and for me, it's not as simple as, well, they're open, shoot it. I mean, we all know how this team is built, and they're not built to shoot the ball, but that's today's NBA, so they're still going to get, in my opinion, a high number of three-point attempts regardless. But for me, I look at how they're built, the physicality, and the energy and effort that we've been talking about a lot throughout the season. At home, it seems like this team is able to play to their identity a little bit better, where they're physical and they win the rebound battle. And that's where those shots and rhythm that you talk about tend to occur and come a little bit easier. Do you see that? I mean, you follow this team on the road. Do you see the difference in physicality and energy from home to away, and that impacts the shooting?
Exactly. Yeah, you do. You do. You see a team that's more relaxed at home. And you see a team that's, like you said, a team out of rhythm at time, a team that's rushing stuff. You see a lot of times, a lot of guys, the ball stops moving and guys are jacking up things. You know what I mean? You see that more so on the road than you do at home. And I think that not only affects the shooting, it affects everything that they do. And that's what you see, because it seems like you see guys pressing more so. But you're right, that the energy, there's always like, we got this. We're going to be cool, calm. Right. We're going to be okay. We're going to get out there. We're going to run. We got this. On the road, it's kind of like, okay, they're down by like 8 points with 6 minutes left. And, you would think that they still would be calm. But then there's also like, oh, man, well, we just lost 5 in a row. Although they'll tell us that they don't think that. But sometimes you wonder in their mind, is it like the way we're thinking about it, the media and the fans, are they thinking the same thing? Like, okay, maybe I got to turn it up now. And like you said, just because it's an open shot doesn't mean it's a great shot.
Right, and it makes it such a bizarre thing because they might take that same shot at home and make it. They're making it 46% of the time, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's always a good shot there either. It's just, he made it on at home as opposed to on the road.
Yeah. So, that's it. It's a crazy thing. I mean, you know what? We could write a book about this, y'all. It'll be a philosophy class.
Well, Keith, doesn't it all come back to the same point, though, Keith? Like, I feel like whether we're talking about this three-point trend that's odd, or Ben Simmons shooting, or Jay Rich's, spurts of being a good player and then not being good, it all feels like it comes back to time and comfort and this team figuring out what it does well and figuring out what it doesn't do well and then trying to compensate for that. And we say it every year, but there's talent obviously on this team, and it just feels like time, always we come back to that. Even the energy that Ryan's talking about, how they don't always play with the same energy and effort night to night. I feel like that's part of the uncomfortability that guys have with each other.
You're exactly right. And it's, it's funny, not funny, but after they lost to Houston, and after they lost this last game in Indiana, Tobias kind of said, well, especially in Houston, he said, we got to figure it out. Like, all of us are good enough to, like, do it by ourselves. Like, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. Like, they're good enough to take that lead role, but they have to figure out a way to play together. You know what I mean? To incorporate everyone in there. And I think that's what happens a lot of times when, you bring so many new pieces together. There are guys that, Brett Brown wants them to play a role, but then it comes to a point when you're down and when you're losing, and there's certain games, you're like, hey, it's time for me to get mine. And it's not like selfishly, but it's like you want to help the team, and that's the best way you can do it. And, we look at it, and a lot of people are saying it, now, but you look at how the team is built. Yes, they're a big team, but you have two guys who, Al Horford and Joel Embiid, who are better suited to play the center spot, right? But on paper, it sounds great, but the only problem is, since they're both better suited to play the center spot, and you have Ben Simmons, a guy who's an exceptional athlete, but he just doesn't shoot the ball, the spacing is bad. And then, as good as Josh Richardson is, he can make a shot, but he's not a knockdown shooter. So that's part of the problem, where you have all these guys who have, similar skill sets, so to speak. Now Josh is different, but he's not like a J.J. Redick type that will stretch the court, so to speak. So I think that's part of the problem. And, that's something that they have to figure out. We all know that in the trade deadline that they're all looking for a shooter. So they're going to bring someone in, but it may come a point to where they'll have to, right now they stagger their starting lineup, at the 6-minute mark. Guys, the only time we see those five on the floor is at the start of the game, the start of the second half, and the last 5 minutes of the game, even sometimes 3-4 minutes. But it may come a point where, Brett Brown has to decide, like, hey, will I be better off, like, bringing Al Horford off the bench when Joel comes back, just so, we can start off and be strong from the start. So there's a lot of decisions to have to make. And, that's part of the problems that they're having right now.
Keith Pompey at Pompey on Sixers. Check out the Inquirer.com. And, of course, Sixers tonight. They take on the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie is back, and we'll see if the hot hand returns beyond the arc at the Wells Fargo Center. It's good catching up, Keith. I'll see you soon, pal.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I'm sorry for air beating in hell to pit.
Oh, man.